Today I'm going to talk about PMS, and no girls, I'm not talking about your monthly period. I'm talking about parasitic mite syndrome in your colony. They are not happy. So that being said, we should probably sit back. The first thing is they are actually acting normal.
So here's how I apply it. Doesn't matter which side you do, just make sure you do it in the front, I got it in the back, lay it across like I did here.
Well, why don't you do it?
But they're not happy.
So as a beekeeper, we all know that mites is one of our biggest issues because it can go unrecognized until the colony just collapses and dies and we don't know why. So it's pretty important to know what you're looking at so that you can make sure you also are not seeing the same thing in your colony. So Varroa Mites syndrome or parasitic mite syndrome is not a brood disease, but often it shows up looking like you have a brood disease, and it creeps up slowly over time, which that's what makes it so bad to have mites in your colony, because you don't really realize you have them until all of a sudden you see this parasitic mite syndrome, and at that point your levels are pretty high. So for any new beekeepers watching, Varroa mites, they're pretty freaking smart. So what happens is a adult female Varroa, they will walk into a cell just before that cell is about to be capped. Pretty smart, right? So they'll walk into that cell, lay all of their eggs, and walk back out so that then the cell is capped. To every person who has commented asking why I wear a bee suit, this is what happens when you keep aggressive bees. Every time they requeen, the more aggressive mine get. As you can see, I can't even stand 20 feet from my hive without them coming to check me out or try to pelt my head. We must be getting close that time of year when all of the bees get super pissy because the nectar starts to flow. So if you notice your bees are kind of aggressive, that's why they get hangry too, just like we do. So yeah, I'm gonna keep this bee suit on. But anyways, as I was saying, so Varroa mites are really smart and they lay all of their eggs in the brood so that when it hatches, it walks out with the new bee and like 20 more mites walk out into the hive. So the reason why you've probably heard that mites really like drone brood is because one, drone brood is bigger than worker brood, so it leaves more room for that female Varroa mite to lay more eggs. And second, drone brood takes a little bit longer than worker brood does. It takes 4 more days to develop, so that gives those mites in that cell more time to develop, so that when they walk out, they're even stronger. So yeah, just keep that in mind. That's why they like drone brood. So now we know that Varroa is in the brood, and this is why sometimes it could show up as a brood disease, because also our bees are slightly hygienic, so they can smell that brood is infected underneath the capping, so they'll chew that capping off and try to pull the brood off. And that is the very first symptom that a lot of people will see. It's called bald brood, and it'll literally just look like either one, they just open the cell and you just see this brood just sitting there, this half developed bee that you can almost see through. It's super white. That's bald brood. And in other cases, the bees can actually start to cannibalize that brood. So it'll look like they literally had their heads bitten off of. Yeah, kind of weird. And sometimes if you see that bald brood and you decide to pull it out with a toothpick, sometimes you might actually see Varroa on that brood or in the cell. So that's also a good thing that you can check to look at to see if you have Varroa there. And recent studies have also discovered that the majority of that chewed down brood, when they bite the head off like that, actually is infected with deformed wing virus. So this is a way of them trying to prevent it from spreading to other brood. Not really sure how effective it is, but they're trying. So the next symptom you might see is a spotty brood pattern. Now this is pretty much in any sort of brood disease that you see, there will always be a spotty pattern, and that is because the brood is dying and they're taking it out as it dies. So it's gonna kind of look like a shotgun-like pattern. I'm gonna open this hive up because this is one of my hives that did have PMS. I did just treat with Formic Pro, so I'm hoping that I'm not going to see a whole lot of it, but at the same time, I want to show you guys what it looks like so that if you see it in your colony, you know exactly what you're looking at. And I see that they're guzzling down my sugar water pretty quickly. This is a mixture of 2 to 1. In fact, I still have my Formic strips on. I will be taking them off shortly, but oh yeah, they're definitely propolised on there. Now here is a prime example of a spotty pattern. You can tell there's like a little bit of brood here, a little bit of brood here, and then they just started backfilling it with honey and pollen. So yeah, this is usually a symptom of some sort of brood disease. And also down here, they are actually in the process of taking that one out, it looks like, and that one's a little bit chewed down. This is what I talk about when I say bald brood. They'll start to chew away at the wax capping so that they can take them out. So it looks like they did do a pretty good job of cleaning out all of the dead larvae and the melting larva that was in here. So I'll post a video of what I saw earlier this year that I thought was just sac brood, but then once it persisted, I realized it was actually this PMS that was going on. So it's the number one tell, at least for me, the number one tell that I see is a colony that has PMS is when I see the brood literally looks like it's melted down, but it's 100% white in color. It's not yellow like European foul brood. It's not brown like American foul brood. And it stays up and down and it doesn't curl or twist in any way. And when you pick it out with a toothpick, it will come out in sort of like a chunk, or in my case, it was disintegrating on the day that I saw this. So this is the tell-all sign that you have PMS, is this molten down, like melted looking brood. And like I said, the key thing there is that the brood is pearly white and it's not yellow and it's not brown. It's not changing any sort of color. It's not starting to turn like a brownish decaying kind of color that you'll see with sac brood once it fully dies. And here is an example of what sac brood looks like. See that pointy nose? Oftentimes the colony is a little stressed and is not able to take care of it themselves, but usually strong colonies can take care of sac brood virus themselves. So if you're seeing this in your colony, do an alcohol wash, do a mite check, and see what your mite level is, because there could be something else going on. So if you see a mite on a bee, it's likely that your levels are very high because they're pretty hard to see in the first place. They like to attach themselves to the underside of a bee, or sometimes you'll see it right behind the wing or on the side. So if you do ever see a mite on your bees, do an alcohol wash right away, check to see what your levels are, because it's likely that they're pretty high. And especially if you ever see deformed wing virus, then yeah, you need to get on the mite load there, because it's probably pretty high. But I wasn't able to find what I was looking for in that hive, so I'm gonna look through this hive to see if I have a better example for you. Since, like I said, I probably should have done this video before I treated with Formic, but the temps were just right and I just had to go for it. So yeah, it is what it is. So like I was saying about sac brood, oftentimes PMS first does show up as sac brood, and then it later progresses into full-on PMS. So yeah, if you ever see sac brood in your hive, like the cell that I showed you there, please do an alcohol wash, because they're often confused and they kind of go hand in hand a lot of times, at least that I've noticed. So another symptom that I have noticed is that oftentimes colonies that have PMS will supersede their queen often. They do this because since there's an issue with the brood, they think it's because of their queen, and they think their queen is no good. So they'll try to replace her as much as they can. It looks like this colony cleared out a lot of their dead brood as well. So if you're still unsure, like I keep saying, make sure you do an alcohol wash, check what your mite load is. I'll give you a little bit of a better picture on what is going on. And also take use of all of the resources that you have. There are European foul brood tests, American foul brood tests that you can do to get a definite answer to make sure that you don't have one of those. PMS is not something that they can clear up on their own. It is 100% something that you have to step in, you have to intervene and make sure you get that mite count down in order for them to start getting better. So I hope that helps you figure out what is going on in your colony. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.